It's me, God's comic, Brad Stine. Brad Stine Has Issues. Today, we're going to talk about confirmation bias. I know, it's not a real sexy subject. That's why I've decided I'm going to do the entire monologue wearing this leopard print Speedo. And if you subscribe, I might even let you see it. Confirmation bias. What does it mean? Who suffers from it? And is there a vaccine we can give to those caught in its clutches? Well, first let me remind you of this. I'm a conservative. I admit it. And that means I'm willing to admit I'm not perfect. Always right, but not always perfect. But confirmation bias is a real psychological concept. And the truth is, it's almost impossible for everyone, conservative and progressive, not to be infected by it, because one of these symptoms is that people who have it always think it's everybody else's flaw. For the definition of confirmation bias, for those of you who don't read, we go to Merriam-Webster, and let's face it, Merriam, that old bag, always thinks her take on definitions is the right one. Anyways, confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out and interpret information in a way that confirms one's own beliefs or preconceptions. It's kind of a pseudo-scientific version of the half-full glass. Pessimists say, "Who drank half my water?" Optimists say, "Who filled my cup up halfway? Thanks." And socialists say, "I'm still on formula, and I want the optimist to pay for it while the pessimist changes my pull-up." But no matter how they respond, it comes from the character or lack thereof of the individual. You see, everyone has a worldview. Now, a worldview simply means how do you interpret the world and what goes on in it. So if you believe the world is unfair to certain people, then everything you see, every news story, every action, every sentence uttered by others is going to be interpreted through the filter of how you already see things. See, one thing all Americans realize is how polarized we become. Well, confirmation bias is part of the reason, because it makes it impossible to reason with each other. Let's take an example from President Trump. He started calling CNN fake news. Now, if you aren't a fan of CNN, then you're easily able to interpret its left-leaning bias as, well, left-leaning bias. Because you aren't listening to actual objective reporting. Instead, you're hearing a glorified op-ed based on how these at one-time journalists and anchors see the world. But if you are progressive, then you interpret the left-leaning bias as just reporting the facts. See, you already see the world through leftist ideology, so you literally are unable to see the flaws in the reporting, if they exist, simply because you want it to be true. Now, I know what you're thinking, especially if you're progressive, because, well, you don't think that much, so it's easy to follow. But you might say that conservatives do the same thing with Fox. You'd be right, by the way. When the conservative hears a host on Fox that isn't towing the conservative line, they see him or her as a traitor. How do they sneak this guy in there and tell us things we don't want to hear? Wait. Are you stunned by what you just heard? A conservative admitting he might have a bias? Yeah. Here's where it gets challenging, folks. Just because you're biased doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. One's man's bias, another man's convictions. See, that's the difference between the conservative philosophy and a leftist or progressive philosophy. You see, conservatism is beholden to truth. We actually believe that truth exists. Immutable truth, not my truth or a truth, actual truth that exists irrespective of my beliefs. What? I see heads exploding in dorm rooms throughout the country. You mean relativism isn't absolutely true? No, you dork. Think about it. If an ideology says it's absolutely true that there is no absolute truth, then it cuts its own throat. Oh, that might be too graphic. Okay, for the snowflakes. It defends itself. Look, to a conservative, when what I believe conflicts with what is true, I change my beliefs. To the progressive, they're taught, when what they believe conflicts with the truth, they change the truth. Listen, I get it. I'm conservative, so I have to train myself to try and discern fact from feelings. The good news is conservatism is true, so it makes my self-editing a lot easier. All right, seriously. How do you differentiate between beliefs and objective truth? Well, you're at the right show. You have to apply an age-old formula that takes years of discipline and self-denial to implement. It's called education. I'm not talking about what has become the university fall education that teaches kids what the tenured professors want to create out of the vulnerable minds of 18-year-olds. I'm talking about what universities used to specialize in, critical thinking. If you want to determine what is true as opposed to your opinion, there are a couple ways to go about it. One, always listen to and acquire views that oppose yours so you can compare them. Look around at universities. See what ideas are they allowing in and what are they forbidding. Who's being disinvited from universities, progressives or conservatives? If you don't know, I'll do your homework for you. Conservatives are being disinvited. Which ideas are causing some students to protest violently by shouting down other ideas and slandering them with insults? Are they progressive ideas or conservative? Only conservative ideas. What is 90% of professors' ideology in most universities, conservative or progressive? Are you catching on yet? Progressive ideas dominate academia. So if you're smart, or you want to be, and especially if you lean left, you need to ask, what are progressives so afraid of that they not only won't debate conservative ideas, but also believe they have the right to censor them? How bad is your ideas that they can't withstand scrutiny? The moment someone says you can't disagree with me, you need to be suspicious of them. If you aren't, then you're comfortably locked into confirmation bias, and you become a slave to others thinking for you. You can't know if something is true, by the way, unless you have all the info from both sides. If you get all your info from the left, you literally will never be able to think critically because you were never taught to defend your position. You've been taught instead that all you need to do is shout loudly, cry occasionally, and call your opponents names. If you feel good about that, then you must be right. By the way, that's how children argue. They yell and scream and demand their way. Think about that. If you're an institution of higher learning, you're literally spending thousands of dollars on a college education that's teaching you to behave the way you did in kindergarten. Doesn't that insult you? Dang, you could have saved a lot of dough if you decided to stop learning at 6. Secondly, you have to train yourself to tell the difference between fact and opinion. Look at ideas historically and see if they were tried, and if so, were they effective? In other words, forget what you want to be true. Look around and have the courage to be able to walk away from some concept you think is good, like socialism, for example, and realize it meant well, but it never worked. How do you do that? Is to first do some introspection. Be honest with yourself in regards to your social belief system. Are you a progressive or a conservative? You need to know. Be honest with yourself. Then, when you observe the facts about an idea, does the conclusions make you not want to agree with them, even if there are facts and statistics to back the claim? You see, America? Progressives and conservatives want the same thing. This is something progressives never say about my people, but I'm saying it about you. You want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But we do disagree on the best way to implement those ideas. That will be the eternal challenge. To agree, disagree, agreeably. It's not easy. Nothing good is. But that's why you watch my show. So I can do all the thinking for you. So you can be autonomous. This is God's comic, Brad Stine. And remember, being PC-free is finally liberty. Join the movement. And if not, put a helmet on. Hey guys, I hope you like my brand new show on my brand new channel. Brad Stine Has Issues. And I needed to fix those issues, and I was willing to do it. I'd do whatever they needed me to do. I did a lobotomy, I did another one, and then another one. Why? They didn't take. Then I did electroshock therapy, and I even added, it's a pill that goes up the nether regions. But I didn't care. It's for you. It's not for me. I already know who I am. I already know all the answers, and I already know I have issues. But I had to be out there to help you. Kind of a martyr. So, like and subscribe to my channel, and your issues will be cleared up too. Hit the notification bell to get all the updates, and you also will be cured of any issues you might have. And even watch some of these videos so you can laugh when you never laughed before. That's why I'm here, folks. I got my issues corrected. Now my job